Season 1 has premiered for The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, and despite with the general audiences it being quite a decent show and somewhat of a critical success, for fans and especially Tolkien fans, it was less so for some because of a lot of the stuff in Season 1 being quite original or not many canon events happening from Tolkien's works. This could have been deliberate, or this could be due to having no rights, who knows. So today we'll be going through my Harry from Fellowship of Fans outline and how I would plan the story for The Rings of Power Season 2. Of course, I am not a professional writer or have had any experience in the entertainment and media businesses, and also I'm not trying to undermine the writing team or the showrunners. This is just a fun thought exercise around if I was in charge, how would I attempt to go about it, but more importantly, looking at what things I would at least want to see in Season 2 regardless of how I structure these episodes. There are three main rules I will be following. The first one is sticking as closely to Tolkien's works and events in the Second Age as possible, not reverse a current storyline. For example, we know Isildur is in Mordor, I'm not just going to start Season 2 with him in Numenor again. And the third one is that it has to be an 8-episode structure, as Season 2 is 8 episodes in length. I won't be covering Numenor or Rune/Stranger storyline in today's video either, that will be for part 2. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The first scene and piece from the first episode and entire season itself would be at the Grey Havens, and we have Círdan who is at the docks and a ship is coming to the shore, and it is a raggedy boat, not a beautiful elven one, and then a character gets off and it is none other than Celeborn himself. It would be nice having a cold open like this. He is battered and bruised, and when taken in by Círdan, he explained what happens, and I would include flashback scenes to the battle from the prologue and then him being taken prisoner. Then it would skip to the sinking of Beleriand, but after half the land falls, Celeborn is still alive with some orcs trapped, and that is at Tol Fuin, the island included on the Amazon map, and basically he was trapped there all that time but then escaped. As a nice Easter egg, Tol Fuin even means Dark Isle, so you can work that in as well. Honestly, this is really the only way to have a character who is somehow alive but has not been seen in Middle-earth, so I've kept with Rule 2. Instead of just having Celeborn magically appear, I've given him somewhat of a backstory to explain his disappearance. Then we go to Eregion to see our main and most important character of Season 2, Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor is agitated, always pondering, restless even, because ever since he created the 3 Elven Rings, he has wanted to create more, but with the presence of Gil-galad and absence of Halbrand, he really can't do it. But he still wants to make something. Then in the halls comes a dwarf, his very old friend Narvi. They rejoice, and Celebrimbor takes him on a tour of the new tower and forge made in Season 1 and explains to his friend his need to make more stuff. Then Narvi gives him the potential idea he's been working on as well for quite a while and wanted to get improved, which is a creation of a new door on the western side of Khazad-dûm. They both agree, and Narvi goes back to ask his king during the third for permission. Now we transport ourselves to the leads of Season 1, Galadriel alongside Elrond, who are currently travelling to Lorien to see the Sylvan Elves and King Amdir. Elrond has been sent by Gil-galad as a political envoy to the realm to see if they can start contacts. Galadriel's reason is soon to be discovered. This political storyline between the Noldor and Sindar Sylvan Elves will be the storyline Gil-galad will mainly have for Season 2, but until the 2-episode battle, as it is a way to keep him as an important character of the plot, whilst also building on what Tolkien wrote. As you know by the War of the Last Alliance, Armdir and Oropher are under a different banner to Gil-galad, so it'll be interesting to see the backstory and how this develops. On the way here, Elrond and Galadriel will also mention Halbrand, and Elrond will admit to knowing the truth too, but they both decide to keep it quiet and hope Halbrand is gone forever. Talking of Halbrand, we cut to him in his dark robe in Mordor, and then he gets to a massive crowd, almost army size, of orcs circled around Adar, who is on a boulder. Adar speaks of the future and the plans they have for Mordor, and the orcs are enthused, but then Halbrand comes from the crowd, and Adar remembers from earlier that this is Halbrand, and then they face off, and then Sauron kills Adar. Adar was a great character, but at the end of the day, firstly, he's not a talking character despite being a lot like one, and secondly, it's hard to have two big evils, especially when this 2-episode War of the Elves and Sauron battle is coming so soon. Halbrand then gets up and talks to the orcs and announces himself as Sauron, their Dark Lord, and all the orcs near, including one orc who is actually dressed quite weirdly, and under the helmet we find out that it is Isildur himself. He is shocked to realise Halbrand is Sauron and needs to get out of there to spread the news. Halbrand says more evil villain stuff, I'm sure, as in all stories, and then Wardreg comes up and finally meets Sauron and submits himself to the cause. Then Halbrand makes him in charge alongside 3 other orc chieftains, and it is their duty to get the orcs ready for an upcoming war. Isildur leaves the crowd and finds Beric and rides away and realizes the information he has and what he must do with it. He has to go and deliver this news to the High King and warn the elves before returning to Numenor. Galadriel, Elrond make it to the outskirts of Lorien, and then episode 1 ends with Isildur getting to a sign that points to Pelargir and rides in that direction. End of episode 1. Episode 2 begins back at the Grey Havens, again same as episode 1, and Gil-galad has arrived and sees that Celeborn is alive, and they have a dinner, and then he of course asks about Galadriel and if she is safe and where she is. Gil-galad just says she is okay and on a political mission to Lorien, but she'll be alerted immediately of Celeborn's arrival. We then cut to Lorien where Gil-galad and Elrond meet King Amdir, who welcomes them, but then out of nowhere next to the king runs a fair golden-haired female elf, who straight away goes and hugs Galadriel, and Galadriel doing the same. It is Celebrian, her daughter. They continue the reunion, and then Elrond meets her for the first time, and it isn't awkward, but they both seem to be a bit shy. Okay, I admit I'm not very good at writing romance, and I know Elrond meets Celebrian in Rivendell, but due to time compression, unfortunately there is no Rivendell right now, and it is logistically hard and nearly impossible for these two characters, Elrond and Galadriel, to be together most of the season, and to have Elrond and Celebrian not meet somehow. So we're gonna just have to do this and compromise. We then cut to Eregion, and it is Celebrimbor and his great eye Myrdain crafting some small jewels and prototypes for the planning of the Doors of Durin, but then Celebrimbor gets alerted of a human who has arrived and is currently in the courtyard. Celebrimbor goes to the courtyard and is standing in front of the Feanor statue, which is ironic, there is a human, and of course it is Halbrand, and they rejoice, and Celebrimbor welcomes him back and takes him to the forge. Halbrand explains his return because of his love for crafting last time, and he sees Celebrimbor's ring and asks him about it, and instead suggests if they could make more. Celebrimbor, who just wants to create, obviously accepts this idea, and they get to work right away. At last we go to the dwarves, and it is Narvi in the king's chamber with Durin III and Durin IV, but Durin III is effectively on his deathbed and he is lying there gravely ill. So Durin and Disa are basically given the orders, and Narvi comes to him with the plan and he agrees. Also, because the king is ill, Durin IV requested the name of this door to be named by his father's name, Durin. Then we have Durin and Disa with their children in their house, and they discuss the king's health and whether Durin would be able to step up if the time arises. We then cut to Isildur, who rides and makes it to Pelargir, which is filled with all the Southlander survivors, and then he finds Arondir, Theo and Bronwyn. He explains to them what has happened and what he must do. Bronwyn and Arondir are in shock that their king is in fact Sauron, but Theo is less shocked in horror but confused, and also a little bit intrigued. Isildur then stays in Pelargir for the rest of the episode before leaving at the end, but we will come back to that. Back in Lorien, some of the normal meeting and acquainting scenes happen. Now it's just Elrond and Amdir in a room. Elrond goes through his proposal from Gil-galad, which is about trying to find a potential alliance between the two elven factions and to help each other, but then Amdir, whilst remaining cool, sees this as almost as Gil-galad trying to assert his influence and maybe even in the future try and have them submit to his rule. But as Amdir is a collected elven king, he tells Elrond in the negotiations that he will travel to Lindon and meet the High King himself. Then we have a closer scene between Galadriel and her daughter about what had happened in the past when she left and why she would have never gone west to Valinor without her. Then before Galadriel leaves with Elrond, she thanks Amdir for looking over and giving protection to her daughter in Lorien whilst her husband was lost, and she was commander of the northern armies, so therefore no one had time to look after. They leave back to Lindon and Celebrian is with them. We then go back to Eregion, and Celebrimbor and Halbrand are well underway with the forging of these further rings, and by the end 7 more rings are made. Halbrand and Celebrimbor wonder what to do with these, but then Halbrand remembers earlier on that Celebrimbor had mentioned that Durin III was gravely ill, as he was told this by Narvi when he had come. And he also knew of Celebrimbor's idea of creating the Doors of Durin with Narvi, so he suggests why not give one of these new rings as a present to Durin III as a gift during these troubling times, and Celebrimbor thinks that is a great idea and also thinks that now he can work on the doors too, so it is perfect. Of course, the manipulation and cunningness of Annatar through the character of Halbrand is coming through here, as these rings of power which have the taint of Sauron will go to the race of the dwarves and help Sauron with his dominion over all the races of Middle-earth. We then go back to Pelargia, and Elrond and Bronwyn say goodbye to Isildur as he rides away. Then they decide what to do and what side they should be on, as just like 1,000 years before, an evil person is their king. Then they go back to their house and they see Theo is gone, his walking stick is gone, and so is his backpack. Then they see a note where he says he has left for a period of time but will be back soon, and for them not to come after him and not to be worried as he will again be back. Elrond and Bronwyn panic, and then Bronwyn tries to run after him, but then Elrond stops her, explaining that this is his own will and you will just have to wait for him to return. And eventually Bronwyn agrees and stops. Then we have a montage of Elrond and Galadriel and Celebrian leaving Lorien and on the road, then Isildur riding with Beric trying to get to Lindon, then Celebrimbor walking the path towards Khazad-dûm, and finally Theo with his stick as he walks to the edge of the borders of Mordor and he looks in the distance. But it doesn't end here, as we again cut back to the Grey Havens with Círdan, Gil-galad and Celeborn are all still there, and Círdan gets told that a ship is approaching and that it is in fact a Númenórean ship. On that ship is Captain Kiliator and Anarion, the brother of Isildur. This is where episode 2 ends, and of course with Anarion's arrival you will find out in my part 2 video, which starts from episode 1 but in fact covers the Númenórean storyline and the Rune storyline, and you'll find there how Anarion came into the story. As for my season 2 story, this isn't his first appearance. Also, we have Kiliator, who is immensely important for the Númenórean armies, as he is the captain of the king's ship, and it is important to have him in the show, I believe. I will in part 2 explain more about Anarion and how I am going to mix his traits with Eldarion the Mariner, and the relationship between him and Viantor being mirrored with Anarion and Kiliator, but that is for next week. Well, there is my episode 1 and 2 planned for season 2 of the Rings of Power. Let me know what you think, whether you agree or disagree with some of the decisions or how you would have done it differently. But to go over what we have established in the first 2 episodes of my plan, it is actually quite a lot. The introduction of Círdan, the return of Celeborn and giving a viable justification as to his absence, the return of Celebrian and again a justifiable explanation for absence, going to the death of Durin III happening soon so there will no longer be 2 Durins alive, Annatar and Celebrimbor's story beginning with the forging of the Dwarven Rings, the cunningness and manipulation of Annatar, the relationship between Celebrimbor and Narvi, and then the idea of the creation of the Doors of Durin, the death of Adar, meaning only one Dark Lord Sauron, the return of Anarion solving his whereabouts, introducing Kiliator to the story, introducing Lorien and King Armdir, another Elven king, and identify the differences and the politicization between the different Elven clans like the Noldor and Sylvan Elves. By the looks of it, it doesn't sound that bad, as I do believe we have also followed the 3 main rules, as we are following from where season 1 ended off and trying to get it close to Tolkien's second age timeline as possible. But at the end of the day, the main actual point of this video is not really how I put these different events and storylines together to make a 2 episode arc, but more so a list of things I would like to see in season 2, but I just showed it in a fun and integrated way. But thank you guys for watching. I of course really appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe. Until the next video, my friends, goodbye.